Joined now on the Settlers Bank phone lines by Wisconsin's senior Senator, Republican Ron Johnson. Senator Johnson, welcome back to the show.
Morning, Josh. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Great.
So I want to start with the big legal drama that broke this week. Tuesday, both Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort, high-level aides formerly to President Donald Trump, both incurred felony convictions. Are you concerned that this development on the legal side imperils President Trump's administration?
It's just hard to say. It's obviously not helpful. The Manafort case was completely divorced from outside from the case. Most of the Cohen case was as well. But it's in the hands of the courts right now, and we'll see how that process plays out.
So the Manafort charges were related to money laundering and other work that he did with Ukrainians. This was prior to his time being CEO of the Trump campaign. But if this is completely divorced from what Robert Mueller is investigating, why do you think Robert Mueller actually prosecuted that from his team himself instead of handing it off?
I can't really answer the question. Again, from my standpoint, the Mueller investigation is pretty much a black box, other than what I read in the press, and so I'm not going to speculate. I've been relatively upfront saying that this has gone about. We've gone about this completely backwards. We should have first given Congress full access to all the information so we could do our investigations, issue our reports, and then based on those reports, if there were criminal referrals required, we could have turned those over to the Justice Department. If the Justice Department felt there were conflicts, that's the point you appoint, or that's the point that you appoint a special counsel. But because we appointed a special counsel, it's been 18 months. The American public, other than getting a few leaks and kind of what developments occur, still pretty much in the dark in terms of exactly what all happened, both on the investigation prosecution side as well as what may or may not have happened inside, the campaigns. And I'll say campaigns because we had the Steele dossier, we had the Clinton campaign involved in that as well. So there's a lot of information. There are a lot of questions that remain unanswered. And it's been, from my standpoint, this has dragged on way too long without having far more questions answered.
All right. So I want to move on now. You are the chair of the Senate Homeland Security and Government Oversight Committee. Did I get that right?
Government Affairs, but that is, we are the Senate Oversight Committee, plus we're the committee that has jurisdiction over the Department of Homeland Security as well.
Okay, but that does not include election security, does it?
Legislative jurisdiction resides in the Rules Committee, but we certainly have oversight responsibilities, and we just had a all-Senate secure briefing yesterday. I've been briefed a number of times when it comes to what has and hasn't happened, including a briefing back in September 2016 with the Obama administration where they notified us that there was Russian attempts, but that they had it all covered. They were working with the states, all was well, and they were asking members of Congress to go out and tell the American public that they had it covered and that the election would be legitimate in November 2016, and they wanted us to do that right up to the point where all of a sudden the wrong person won. And then all of a sudden now, according to some, this is the greatest threat to our democracy. So it's amazing how the narrative has changed based on the election results.
Yeah, that's pretty stunning right there. I did not know that the Obama administration was asking members of Congress to say that the election threats were under control right up until Election Day when things didn't turn out how everybody was expecting. But we now see election manipulation and interference coming in all different angles. Facebook, Twitter, even Microsoft now cracking down on foreign managed accounts and websites that are attempting to influence election outcomes and interfere with election actors like campaign committees and think tanks. Can the federal government and should the federal government do more to enhance security of our election systems?
Well, first of all, they're doing a lot, and I think that was really the takeaway from yesterday's briefing is whether it's the Director of National Intelligence, the Director of the FBI briefed us, and the Secretary of Homeland Security, and they laid out all the things they are doing. And we have far greater coverage in terms of defenses. Just the greatest defense on cyber threats is awareness, and we are fully aware now. We do have some of these social media sites taking down some of these phony sites, which is pretty effective because the only way you can have influence with social sites is you have to have a pretty large following that has to be built up over months and months and months. They invest all that time into a social site with a lot of followers. You take that thing down, they lose all their influence. So we're doing an awful lot. We are in a better shape. is my conclusion from the briefing yesterday, than we were in 2016. But there's no guarantee. I mean, Russia has been interfering with one of the things that Dan Coates talked to us about briefing with NATO. Everybody admitted that they've been trying to influence their elections within NATO countries. So I'm chairman of the European Subcommittee on Foreign Relations. We've held hearings on Russian interference. They basically tried to act a war against Montenegro. So this doesn't come as a surprise, but awareness is the number one defense. And we're doing an awful lot, but there is no guarantee. They are very persistent in what they're trying to do here.
We're talking with U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican, chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, and also a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, as you mentioned there. I want to shift gears now, Senator. I want to talk about tariffs. Another $200 billion in tariffs coming down soon on Chinese goods. We've talked before on this show about the $12 billion proposal for subsidies to help farmers get through this pain of the tariffs. Do you believe that these tariffs are having a negative consequence on our relationships with these countries from a strategic standpoint?
Well, they're not helpful in terms of relationship building, but at the same time, we have been abused by our trading partners because we've been so generous and magnanimous in having our markets open up. So President Trump's trying to shock the system to reset global markets. And, there's definitely some risk, and he even admits there's short-term pain for what he considers the longer-term gain. Yeah, I hope he succeeds. My role has been to make sure the administration is aware of the damage being done to individual businesses, and there's a fair amount of it being done. Some of it probably already is permanent. Hopefully most of it can be reversed. But I am concerned about the overall strategy. At least these tariffs are directed at the primary problem, which is China. My advice is conclude NAFTA, conclude the negotiations with Europe so that we can go to China as a united front, demand that they start following the rules, stop stealing our industrial and military secrets. I mean, China's been the bad actor here. They're the number one problem, and we need to really direct most of our efforts toward getting them into compliance.
And do you have a sense of where things stand with these trade deal renegotiations that are happening? Are we any closer to securing updated deals with Canada, Mexico, Europe, others that we've been renegotiating these deals with?
We're hearing a fair amount of confidence that a deal with Mexico is in the very near future. They believe that once they conclude a deal with Mexico, Canada will follow shortly. That'd be very good news. We called a truce on Europe, so we're not escalating that. That's a good thing. And then we can, again, focus on the real problem, which is China. So I've got my fingers crossed. I hope the president succeeds. And my role, my responsibility is to certainly represent the constituents in Wisconsin and make sure the administration realizes while they're going through negotiations, while they're carrying out their strategy, that there's some real harm being done, and they need to be aware of it. And by the way, they are listening. It's one of the reasons President Trump proposed a $12 billion aid package. But the good news there is farmers, to their credit, are very loudly saying we really do want trade, not aid. But even in the farming community, I feel a great deal of support for President Trump's goals, and they're giving him the latitude to do a better deal, realizing they'd be better off in the future. But I think that the clock is ticking, and they realize it as well.
Yeah, all right. So, and that's what I've heard as well, that there are people out there who this may not be the way they would approach this problem, but they're willing to give President Trump an opportunity to let this plan work and see if that actually does happen. Last question for you, Senator. On a different subject here related to Homeland Security, last week NBC News reported that federal officials have confirmed that there are still 565 children that have not been reunited with their parents after having been separated at the southern border. What are the long-term costs of that zero-tolerance policy with these parents now having been returned to their country and this sort of administrative chaos that's broken out that needs to be resolved? What are the costs to taxpayers of this policy?
Well, right now the cost to our current policy is we have full catch and release again. And because DHS, CBP, those agencies don't have the time to verify, for example, when you have an illegal male come in with a young woman or young girl, they can't verify that that's the father. So they don't know, is that a father or a sex trafficker? Is that the daughter? Is that a victim of sex trafficking? And we can't detain them anymore, and so they're just being released. They get caught and they get released. So what is the cost of that? We separate families all the time just in America's criminal justice system. It's tragic. You never want to see it, but it happens. People were separated in the immigration policy in the Bush and Obama administration systems as well. So this president was trying to actually enforce the law, deal with a decision, the Flores decision, that really creates this problem. I'm trying to fix it. Using my committee, we have a piece of legislation that we've already discussed in committee. We'll probably hold a hearing on this, and hopefully we can fix the Flores decision so that we literally can apprehend people, detain them have their day in court, and then either return them to their home country or release them legally into the country. Right now, that's not what's happening. We really have gone back to full catch and release, and that's very dangerous. As we just saw, not only with Kate Steinle in San Francisco, but just the tragedy now that's unfolding in Iowa as well.
Yeah, the Molly
So
Tibbetts.
there's a cost of having a broken system.
All right. So, Senator Ron Johnson, appreciate your thoughts on all of these issues and the time you take to talk to us today. Really appreciate your answers and your service to us, sir. Good luck, and thanks for joining us this morning on the show.
Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.